Shall we get started, everybody? Great, great. So good afternoon and welcome to the Gallery Talk presentation of She Said. It's a docent-curated permanent collection exhibition of artwork created by women artists in celebration of Women's History Month. I'm Benton Jones, I'm the Director of Art. She Says is an exhibition featuring 35 exceptional artworks created by women artists from the Cape Cod Museum of Art's permanent collection, plus 21 artworks that were given to the museum from the 21 Inturo group of artists. We won't go through each one of those individually, but that brings the number up. You can do the math. Artworks in She Said were selected by an all-women dedicated team of museum docents, namely Sean Dahlstrom, Carolyn Dutch, Ellie Friedman, Ann Garrity, Mary Ann Harward, and Maria Ian Zito, sorry, and Sarah Porter. Likewise, our complete docent team, now 26 members strong, were instrumental in researching and writing the corresponding wall texts, providing greater insight into the lives and practice of the artists in this exhibition. I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge their important work, making this and all of our docent-curated exhibitions here at the Cape Cod Museum of Art so robust, helping to bring our permanent collection to life and preserving the stories that might otherwise be forgotten. I'd like to also thank our hanging crew, Gary Urgonski and Steve Petruska, for helping me hang the show. And I would like to thank Yana Jones, our registrar, who had a lot of, there were a lot of moving parts in this exhibition, from selecting the artworks to creating the wall labels and many other things, including even getting the artwork ready for hanging. So thank you to all of those folks. Women artists have historically been underrepresented in museum collections worldwide. According to a 2019 article published in ArtNet News titled Women's Place in the Art World, the national average of women artists accessioned into museum collections between 2008 and 2018 was just 11%. In the case, I know, in the case of the 550 artists represented in the Cape Cod Museum of Art's permanent collection, we have 39% women representation. It's better than the national average, but still not equivalent to the male representation in our collection at 61%. We believe She Said helps to adjust for this gender discrepancy by celebrating the important role women play in the visual arts. This exhibition is part of an ongoing effort to steward the Cape Cod Museum of Art permanent collection and to recalibrate its holdings to better reflect the demographic diversity found in our communities. We have a lot of artwork to present today before we head upstairs and enjoy the exhibition reception. So I'd like to go through each of the artworks in the exhibition in alphabetical order by artist's last name and invite a combination of docents who did some of the research and artists who are here, the living artists who are here, to provide some context for their artwork. And as there are over 35 artworks, I'll ask both the docents and artists in attendance to keep their comments to 2 minutes or less. If there are questions, please raise your hand and we'll try to get to them as they occur. And as speakers get up to the podium, please introduce yourselves so that we know who's speaking. And also docent Nikki Alexander, who's here in the throne over there, has offered to present works by some of the docents who are either not here with us or who would prefer that Nikki do it for them. So let's start with docent Maureen Callahan. who is also the chair of our Permanent Collections Stewardship Committee, the PCS Committee for short, to talk a little bit more about our permanent collection and our ongoing efforts to balance the collection. Maureen?
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming, and thank you, Benton, for asking me to talk about the permanent collection and how Cape Cod Museum of Art is proactively engaged in stewardship through the work of the Permanent Collection Stewardship Committee. The museum operates as a steward of our cultural heritage through collection, preservation, interpretation, and exhibition of regional artworks for public education and enjoyment. The Board of Trustees entrusts the Permanent Collection Stewardship Committee to strategically manage all aspects of the collection and to carry out the work necessary to do so. It ensures accession and deaccession of the collection as directed by the collection management policy. The board decision to digitize the collection in 2022 was a major step forward in fulfilling our stewardship responsibilities. It enabled a transition to a software platform designed for public-facing collection access. The online catalog available on the museum's website is expanding our reach for education and public engagement to a broader audience, facilitating research of the collection beyond the museum walls. Digitization also heightened our awareness for the need to thoroughly and holistically review and assess the entire collection. This project is currently underway. It is the first time such a review has been done since we began collecting 44 years ago. The collection dates back to the 1800s and includes 2,000 works by approximately 550 artists. To date, approximately 1,220 of our 2,000 artworks have been researched and reviewed. When complete, this assessment will further our knowledge and identify and address gaps in the collection. It will help us set goals and priorities for future collecting and guide targeted acquisitions and prudent deaccession to reflect demographic diversity found in our communities. She Said is a strong and diverse sample of exceptional artworks by our collection's women artists who speak to us in their unique visual language. It demonstrates the museum's commitment to bring light and celebrate the rich artistic tradition of our region and the importance of sharing it with the public. So I thank you, and I'll turn it over to Nikki.
Okay, I'm going to be pretending I'm a lot of different people here because I'm representing some wonderful docents. First of all, we have a very small image here. Okay, this is. Oh yeah. Okay. All right. So now we have we have a big image. It deserves it. Okay, this is flora and fauna. When Betsy Bennett, the artist, was 7, her father bought a set of pastels to help her get serious about her art. She eventually received a 4-year scholarship to Philadelphia-based Moore College of Art and Design, where she mastered the use of egg tempera and watercolor. Later studies with Robert Vickery solidified her colorist style. Impressionists, such as Bennett, found beauty in the smallest and most commonplace things. As a Cape Cod watercolorist and art teacher, she said, "You never really look carefully at the world until you start to paint it. In fact, it can almost be a religious experience if you look closely. A disciplined and inventive artist, she taught her students to make the use and the most of happy mistakes, what she called it, which were especially important advice for a challenging medium like watercolor. And here we have a beautiful example of a watercolor, and I kind of like to think of it as a still life outside. Instead of a vase and a bunch of flowers or a fish, where we have a beautiful greenery, and then we have a tree stump, and then we keep proceeding from there. And I think one thing I can add that you might want to look for is start looking at composition. In this particular composition, the artist is actually taking you around in sort of a half circle from the beginning of this bunch of greenery on the right, and then we're going around past the trunk, and then we're going up and into the forest from which this is taken. And it's also really lovely evocation of what, if you look carefully, is seeing the forest for the trees. So I'm going to go on to our next piece, which is Old Factory at Sandwich, and the person who actually did a wonderful job on researching this is Judy McElroy. This is a wonderful piece. An early 20th century pioneer in American art, Evelyn Bodfish Bourne, what a name, was a vital member of the Provincetown Art Colony, and in 1918, after studying in New York City at both the National Academy of Design and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, she moved to a bucolic Buzzards Bay farm. Inspired by her beloved gardens and annuals and the weathered architecture of Cape Cod, Bourne embraced the immediacy of watercolor. So we've got another watercolorist. Her style is modern with a heightened sensitivity to form, movement, and perspective. Old Factory at Sandwich shows a Cubist influence with its pyramidal composition, draws the viewer's eye upward. The flattened perspective and all of that is really kind of telling us where our eye should go. Curving green and gold swaths of color soften the building's palette. The overall feeling is intimate rather than industrial. Now, what I see often when I look at this, and I've looked at it so often, it's almost like it's a castle. I mean, this is a factory, but it looks like a castle surrounded by a moat. I mean, you have a tower. It's almost mythic and mysterious. And we think maybe it's closed, but we see some smoke coming out of the stack. Who's in there? Who's working? The windows are black. We can't see inside. We're kind of wondering what's going on. And the other thing that I kind of love about it, it's a very unusual use of watercolor because we're dealing in shades of gray, shades of brown, very soft, and the lines are soft. So it's not just a hard architectural form. It's a very approachable form that deserves to be preserved and looked at again in a new way. Okay, now I'm going to let our next speaker, is this me?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You're going to get so tired of hearing from me. Okay. Yeah, oh, this I love. This is actually a tiny little painting. But Naomi Bradford's creativity seems to know no bounds. In her Cape Cod studio, which is located perfectly in a former cranberry sifting warehouse, she explored many mediums, including paint, collage, assemblage, photography, ceramics, screen printing, textiles, and jewelry design. Plus, she was a musician and an actor. As Bradford said, life is a tapestry woven together by humanity. In Dreamweaver, she paints on heavily grained paper to enhance its fabric-like texture and the perceived weight of woven cloth. The abstract figure is of a seated woman, her legs confidently astride, her face and figure made up of brightly colored sections. As she sits in her throne-like chair, head in her hand. Is she looking back on a full life and all her adventures, or is she dreaming a reverie of adventures to come? Now, one thing I really notice in this piece is we've got a blank face. It's almost mask-like. We don't know what the features are. It's left to our imaginations to think, who is this? Who is this woman? What is the expression on her face? And I've also noticed as I look at it, she's really a woman of parts. And women are women of parts. But if you look at it graphically, she's got kneecaps. She's got breasts. She has jointed arms. It's almost like she's wearing a suit of armor. And don't women sometimes need a suit of armor?
Right.
She's strong, she's monolithic, and she's in the tiniest little painting. So I hope you get a chance to look at this really impressive painting on a smaller scale. All right, no, oh, did I say who did that? That was Deborah Jacobs, by the way, who did that piece of artwork. Sorry. No, I mean the docent. We know who the artist is. We want to know who the docent is. Okay, now, here we go, let's see. Is this big enough? Okay, we can see it. Yes, yes. This was done by Christina Petruska, that's our docent. And this is by a graphic artist and illustrator, Jean Calhoun. And she took an unexpected path after graduating from the Horace Mann School for Girls and Marriageable Young Ladies. She was determined to hone her craft. She continued her studies at New York City Art School. A successful career followed, one that spanned McGraw-Hill Publishing, Hallmark, and freelance assignments for popular magazines of the day. These two 1940s illustrations from Parents Magazine, if you all remember Parents Magazine, capture Calhoun's whimsical style and technical prowess. In the first one is the other one, Benton. Where's the first? There she is. There she is. In the first, a determined housewife tackles a canvas with unexpected results. Okay, in the second, a woman finds herself literally up a tree. Each story is told with an economy of line and layout. Calhoun's fluid pen and ink strokes are confident, her compositions elegantly balanced, and in 1976 she moved to Cape Cod, where she continued to delight everyone with her whimsical vignettes. And as I looked at this again yesterday, I noticed even the tree in our first picture is leaning away in terror. This is a cartoonist. The easel echoes this stance of the woman. So there's so much going into this. And if you look really closely, in the left-hand corner of each one of these cartoons, you'll see a little creature, a bemused creature. One of them is a little dog watching his mistress do this strange event. And the other one is a supposedly frightening mouse. So, bravo for a cartoon, or brava, I should say, for a wonderful cartoonist. Okay, now I'm handing over to, who's up here now? Gina? Gina, make your entrance.
I'm not Nikki. Okay, I'm Gina Lowe. I've been a docent for about 2 years, having a wonderful experience here, especially when we get to do an exhibit like this, which is a great opportunity for us. I am delighted to talk about a wonderful artist, Michelle D'Angelo. And she, before I get into her beautiful oil painting, I need to tell you what she started out doing with her life before she decided to become an artist. She got a business degree from Northwestern. She worked as a flight attendant for United Airlines and then trained flight attendants. And my favorite thing, she worked for a company where she designed the interior for Chili's bar and grill. Yes, for that restaurant chain. Then she decided that she really wanted to be an artist, went back to school, and ended up doing some incredible pieces like this. For her, for Michelle D'Angelo, home is literally where the art is. Her iconic shapes, very often houses, evoke a sense of hidden intimacy. These ordinary buildings seem to challenge the viewer to discover what is not represented. As she says, the painting may be situated anywhere and nowhere. There are no people because their presence would instigate a tale, and these images are wordless. So here we see a weathered salt box, which seems familiar, yet is it? Where's the door? And why is there a mere sliver of a window? Have we found a place of security, a retreat from the external world? The emptiness around the structure seems amplified. Instead of triggering melancholy, the shades of the blue evoke a feeling of warmth and comfort. Perhaps we are actually viewing a remote family cottage that is filled with memories. And if you do look at a lot of her work, she paints this house over and over again, or several houses, but they're all different. They're infused with different, unbelievable color, but the same, she goes back and back and back to the same image.
I just wanted to make sure that if artists are present, that they come forward and elaborate on the docent's research.
Was that a pointed remark at me? Now we have a different piece, which is Marianne Harward did the research for this one, so I'm pretending I'm Marianne now. After raising her six children in Georgia, Dearborn departed Illinois for a new life on Cape Cod. She opened her own gallery in Harwich Port in 1976, and in 1978 she founded the Guild of Harwich Artists, which is still in existence today. Dearborn loved to travel for inspiration, sometimes on her own, sometimes on commission. These journeys took her throughout England, Scotland, and France. Along the way, she took many photographs, which provided reference and inspiration as she created her watercolor and acrylic paintings and pen and ink drawings. In this quiet scene, the simplicity of composition, lines, and moody colors give us a feeling of solitude and isolation. The long shadows, coupled with dormant seagrasses beyond the porch, indicate the summer season is well over and winter approaches. In this, I'd like you to notice the composition especially. It's a very quiet painting, but if you look at it closely, the weighty side of the canvas is on the right, where you have the rocking chair and a lot of shadow work going on. And on the left side, we see a wall that's balancing it out. So it's an off-center composition. The angle of the rocking chair, as opposed to these vertical boards that you see all along the wall, and then you also have a pillar on the far right. So these are all elements that the artist is trying to work with to create this feeling of a true place. But what's always interesting about a rocking chair is it's a little off balance, and you always expect it to rock. Now, next is, who's coming up now?
Marianne.
Marianne, come on up.
Can I get my pictures out? I'm so thrilled to talk about Del Filardi. Now 96, Del Filardi. Microphone? Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Now 96, Del Filardi retired in Florida. But for many decades, she lived in a home over on the bluff in Truro, and she looked over marshes and birds, mostly birds. She loved the Cape. She is and was a high energy woman, and she would love the marshes and the birds, and she was always an artist. And she would often begin her talks by saying, I was trained to analyze motion. So although she was always an artist, first she was a dancer in those kind of arts. And she got a BS and an MS in dance from Columbia University. And for many years, she was a public school teacher, a role in which she met her lifelong partner, Harriet Rubin. And both of them became very important to Cape Cod, as you'll hear in a moment. Always working with the Cape, the two of them would look at the Cape, they'd look at the marshes, they'd walk. She worked with found objects. During the 60s, she was a jeweler, selling her craft on Cape Cod, as many teachers do. She discovered when she started working with especially metal that she could make images and pieces that were lifelike. And she began getting very excited about working with metal. This eventually had her working with welding, moving into large pieces. She wanted to move out of the small pieces of jewelry and into the large pieces. And she began working with Corten steel, which is a very hard process to work with. One year she did an endangered species series, which brought her to the attention of the Granary Gallery. It was their early years over at Nantucket, and they offered her a one-woman show. As a teacher, she had to leave her profession and spend the whole year doing her art. And she often says, I took a chance on myself, and it was a good thing I did. It was the beginning of people paying attention to what I was doing. And pay attention they did. It wasn't long before she was receiving national recognition, being invited to join very prestigious clubs, and she eventually became an international wildlife artist, especially focusing on endangered species. But in addition to being an artist, Dell and her lifetime partner, Harriet Rubin, founded Blue Heron Gallery in Wellfleet. She had her studio behind it for many years, and they focused on naturalist and Cape Cod artists and achieved a national recognition out of there. She worked in steel, so her works were often referred to as birds of steel. Having said that, eventually she couldn't reach all of her commissions. She was going on in age. I think she was in her 70s when she carefully selected who they would sell their gallery to. And that gentleman was wonderful enough to give me some insight into how busy she was when they bought the gallery. He bought the gallery from her. It remains an icon, an iconic destination for art on Cape Cod, and thrives still today. The three pieces in the show that you can see up there really track her growth from a dancer to a found person and a metal experimenter to the final craftsman where she became nationally and internationally known. The first piece, the old cello player, which I won't look at but you can see, captures, it is a small piece, and if you start with that piece, it is located on the ground, on the main floor between the men's and women's restaurant, in the alcove, because you might not see it if you didn't look for it. In any event, it's called Old Man and a Cello, and it captures mid-moment when the note was created. The owl is also in the corner on the main floor when you're going into the gallery on the left, and it shows how she carefully created attitude with each feather. If you look at the feather creation of each of the owl, and you look at the face of the owl, you can see that the first one was in 1967. There isn't a date on the owl, but it was midpoint to when we did the last one that we put in the show. The larger piece that you have, it isn't larger, but it's more finished, of 1984 is the Roseate Spoonbill. It is in the main gallery, and if you look at that, you can see that it brings the skills of a master welder and a lifetime study of birds in motion. She had a book collection of over 1,000 birds, and would sit and just watch them in her backyard. One of her larger pieces, the Northern Bald Eagle, which many of you have probably seen but maybe not connected to her, is in the sculpture court, and it is gorgeous, and it is large, as she so often liked to work. This museum is very fortunate to have many pieces of her work. We, as audience are lucky that a young teacher had the strength many decades ago to take a chance on herself in a way that combined her passion and talent. I urge you to take a look and enjoy her work. It's still very alive. Thank you.
Are we having fun yet? Okay, I'm Carolyn Dutch, and this is Bagnardi's Early Afternoon by Lisbeth Furman. Lisbeth is known for painting everyday urban scenes of individuals on subways, city streets, benches, and the like. Her figures are often solitary, introspective, or disconnected, people we don't notice nor seek out. The inspiration for this painting was a little different. Lisbeth told me she was taking a pair of boots in for repair, but was so struck, and I'm quoting here, by the light and by his fine face and hands, that she asked Mr. Bagnardi if she might paint him. In the scene, our attention is directed by light, shadows, color, angles, and movement. Sunlight cascading through a window highlights a shoe in the foreground, which then becomes another angle. Multiple angles and arrows, and even this little arrow here, direct us to his hands and to his forehead. That's where the light is. And we naturally seek out his eyes, which are gazing down at his work. And so we too shift our gaze back downward toward his beautiful hands. Notice the swatches of coral red colors, here, 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 and here, forming a sort of circle or halo around those skilled working hands. Lisbeth captivates us with an insightful, intimate look at a seemingly unremarkable scene. She infuses dignity into her subject while also hinting at a bit of loneliness as he goes about the business of his everyday work. I believe there is beauty in the witnessing of moments like this one if we only pay them a little bit of attention. Lisbeth studied with artists in Provincetown in the early 1970s, where she also completed a Dune Shack residency. She lived in New York City for over 25 years and currently resides in upstate New York. She maintains her Cape Cod connection by teaching seasonally at Castle Hill and Truro. So I encourage you to go visit this in the PSD gallery at the end of the hall on the left and see if you can find the other figure in it and let me know. Okay. And I believe Sarah Jane Porter is next. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Miriam Freed lived in Provincetown from 1979 with her fellow artist husband, Cy Freed, photographer and painter with whom she shared a studio. You can read more about their relationship in the studio if you come to the library upstairs. Their work was displayed together in the familial exhibit at here in 2022. She considered her early work structured, but then thought of herself as an action painter, not quite like Jackson Pollock. It was not enough to paint what you see. For a poetic transformation, she says, one must penetrate a thing in order to be able to paint it. What remains is what comes from the spectator and artist together. The relationship between the two, metamorphosis. My painting is abstract when it is impossible to recognize it in it the slightest trace of the objective reality which makes up the normal background of our everyday existence. The absence of any normal background, the absence of any other form of sensible reality compels us to regard it purely as painting and as nothing else, and to judge it according to values that have nothing to do with representation or with the imitation or reproduction of some other thing. Then the work has nothing to convey to us except for the pure elements of composition and color. The idea of pure elements of composition and color is shown in the work untitled, The canvas is somewhat divided into 5 rectangles of different sizes and proportions, with superimposed fluid shapes of vivid mottled color outlined in black. This creates movement across the surface and depth of space on the canvas. Primarily self-taught, Fried was inspired by Japanese wood prints.
Sarah, would you like to, I stole it.
What?
Would you like to
Oh.
point where I stole it?
That's okay. And, okay.
Yeah, take it.
Thank you, Val.
Oh, that's me. Oh, now it's me. Thievery amongst the docents. Oh my gosh. We gotta get rid of this. Okay. Okay, Chris, this is the work of Christine Young. Oh, yes. Okay, this is called Two Figures at Caracalla. A well-traveled artist and noted instructor in painting, drawing, and art history, Franny Golden divided her time between Cape Cod and France. In Two Figures at Caracalla, which is an ancient thermal spa in Rome, we see the classical subject of bathing women interpreted in an abstract figurative style. So we're not quite as abstract as this previous work. Joined together, hip to thigh, the two figures form a single curving shape. Even their elbows almost touch. Their poses mirror each other. The composition is deeply slanted, the perspective is flat, the palette is lush, yet limited. The strong outlines define not just the figures, but the negative space surrounding them. Thick layering of paint and broad, energetic strokes give the entire painting a shared energy. They capture Golden's comment about her work. This is from her. Almost certainly, some forms are archetypal, probably personal statements about being a woman. So here we have opposites also in terms of color, which one thing I love about this painting is you have these very strong colors, and it's a really interesting way to look at the color wheel. You know, we all learned about opposites and how they make even more out of the color that is in front of them. So we basically almost have 3 colors in this, and yet each one really resonates with the other. And I also think it's really interesting to kind of zero in on that negative space, which really makes you realize that there is a lot going on that is about negative space. Some of this, it's just almost as important. It kind of comes in and out. And of course, you're going to see more of this in the show. There are couplings of figures often, and it's really interesting to see how they play against each other, with each other, what they do in terms of each other, in terms of relationship, in terms of the way they work artistically. And I'm going to keep reminding you as we go along. Okay, let's see. I think I'm next. Oh, I did the research for this one. Oh, okay, I'm me. In 1956, a critic overheard gallery goers incredulously remark, "But she can't be the same Dorothy Lake Gregory." To be fair, this shape-shifting artist was primarily known for her children's book illustrations. Yet she was a fearless master of printmaking, oil and watercolor, in a wide array of contemporary styles. Brooklyn-born in 1893, by the age of 14, young Gregory began making drawings for a New York newspaper. She later studied in France and Manhattan. She also spent a summer in Provincetown at the Cape Cod School of Art, but complained of its director and instructor, the venerable Charles Webster Hawthorne. To quote her, "Mr. Hawthorne is the worst teacher I have ever seen. He uses fearfully bad grammar and is a flirt and doesn't give a rap for his students." Gotta love this girl. Despite her unhappy experience in Provincetown, she and her artist husband Ross Moffat eventually settled there and raised 2 children. Gregory began making lithographs in 1932, and a few years later she began what would become her best known prints, which was a series from Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. And they're really very charming. And these remained popular for the rest of her career. In this modest little gem, Gregory experiments, yet again, she's experimenting with collage. Washes of watercolors sweep across an abstract kimono-clad geisha. Layers of pattern papers and metallic trim create a rich visual texture. The overall effect is deliberately decorative and one-dimensional. The finely drawn face, accented with a tiny red paper pout and a charming little hand, added a really lovely doll-like delicacy. One can almost hear the score of Gilbert and Sullivan's The Mikado playing as Gregory's delightful little maid takes center stage. I'm still here. This is Ellie's. Okay, Ellie Friedman is the docent who researched this. Anne Giuliani likens her approach to still life as interior landscapes. I've got this right, yes. Oh, yes, I love this. Akin to the immediacy of painting on plein air, in that they are created directly from observation and not prearranged. Studio Dialogue is the first in a series of monotypes, unique one-of-a-kind prints. Using a plexiglass plate and lithographic inks, a preliminary layer of ink is rolled over the plate and modified with colored inks along with magnesium carbonate and plate oil to vary the viscosity and enable working directly with brush, brayers, and rollers. Arch's 88 printmaking paper is then placed over the plate and a press transfers the image to the paper. According to, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Giuliani, the dialogues have evolved into over 20 happenstances and reflect both emotional and psychological approaches to creating both interior and exterior spaces. And when I looked at this again, I just think in this dialogue, the plant seems very animated. It almost seems to be leaning over in an intense conversation. But who is it talking to? Is it talking to us? Is it talking? Definitely there's something dialogue-like going on. I noticed there's a chair way in the background. And traditionally that's where a human subject would be sitting for a portrait. But there's no one there. And if the plant, this talkative plant, is having a conversation with the chair, it's more of a silent listener. So. That's me.
Hi. I'm Megan Hinton. I guess I'm the first artist talking about the world. I want to thank Sean, the docent, for bringing me in to converse about my work. It's always a good opportunity to talk, and so thank you very much. It's been nice talking to you. What, like a dream come true to be hanging across from my new historic obsession, Evelyn Bodfish Bourne, and cornered around from our great wealthy artist friend Selena Treef. We miss you, Selena. So it's so great to be here. Cove, 2011, now 14 years old. I am a landscape painter. I paint in traditional subject genre, figurative object work, i.e. still life, and landscape. And I'm kind of interested in this idea of like how, as a painter, when we're standing on this beautiful landscape that surrounds us, particularly in this area, just the desire to capture it, to hold it forever in a picture. But my concern over the years has also been to move beyond expected notions of landscape painting. Here, particularly on Cape Cod, where there's like a deep history of it, marine painting in small format. So at this time, I was thinking about how to kind of like upscale it and taking things that I was seeing, and I would do tiny watercolors on site. And my idea was to take the information of the actuality of the scene and abstract it or transform it into something new. And this piece, Cove, is sort of very expressive. I've been very influenced by mid-20th century painters, Milton Avery, who worked with image rather than pure abstraction. Milton Avery, James Lachey, Jan Spiala, and some mid-20th century European painters, particularly from an art movement in Europe called Art Informel or Art Informal. And with that in mind, I was making these large-scale abstractions, and I had a show at this museum in 2011, and it was a show of these paintings in the very gallery that She Said is in, which is kind of cool. So it's back in the gallery after 14 years, and it's interesting. I'm thinking about this. I'll just end with. I'm thinking about this idea of reflection. My partner, Paul Erickson, who's here, gave me this kind of idea the other day. And right now I'm doing work, it's different from this. It's not, the colors aren't as high-keyed. They're a little bit more subdued. I'm working in assemblage, collage. It's sort of a sculptural painting. My work has really shifted a lot, still within the modality of landscape painting. But this opportunity to be here has really given me a chance to reflect on something I did when I was a different kind of artist. And I'm still the same person, but I was in a different place. And that reflection, I think, is really important. And the wonderful thing about making art and being an artist and an art lover, like you all, is that we get to reflect in a time, particularly now, when we're downloading, uploading so much information, and in a lot of reaction to that information, how much are we reflecting? How much time and space do we get to reflect? And this is a nice opportunity. I thank the museum and Sean for giving me that opportunity to reflect on it. And I'll let you make your own interpretation of the painting. So thank you.
Next track of this. Boy, that's a hard act to follow. Okay. This is Marianne Harward. I know Marianne Harward, another docent. Brenda Horowitz has been sketching since she was 12 years old. Now in her 90s, she's still dedicated to drawing and painting landscape scenes every day. She said, "No matter the circumstances, I don't stop. I love the process." Horowitz is a native New Yorker who grew up in Manhattan, but after studying with Hans Hofmann, an abstract expressionist artist and teacher at the Provincetown Art Colony, she decided to spend summers in Truro to paint the landscapes of the Outer Cape. In Orleans Night, we acquire, as she does, a deeper understanding of the land, water, and sky, and their relationships to each other. Her use of bold, bright colors defines a semi-abstract style of composition. We become attentive to the scene and can't help but become enamored of the mysterious setting. This is also a really perfect example of Hans Hofmann's push-pull theory, which you're going to be encountering in some of the works. The idea is contrasting color and shape rather than the traditional use of modeling form with the use of atmospheric perspective. You create the illusion of space, depth, and movement. So each one of these colors that we're dealing with in this painting is resonating with another and creating in a different way a sense of perspective, a sense of more of the painted surface and how you can create by using contrast, which is the push-pull. Some colors want to go back, some colors go forward, and you couldn't ask for a better example of that idea than here. So just keep an eye out for push-pull as you go through the different paintings that you see, because often you'll see some of that element. Okay.
Nikki, for this next one, maybe we should invite Heather Bloom to talk about her mother's piece.
Oh, Heather's here?
She is here.
Oh my goodness,
And
Heather, get up here.
Rachel Ellis Cochran.
Takes one to know that.
Well, I actually wasn't aware until, but I came in earlier because I thought it was at 1 o'clock when the talk was going to be, so I got a preview, which was my delight, really. This pastel painting of my mother's is from a series that she did during the early 80s, and it's based on her remembrance of her childhood home in East Sandwich. And I was part of encouraging her to do this, but believe me, she did it all on her own. But she did have, it's interesting to see the comparison between what the docent felt and what my mother felt. And then I realized too, how we all are part of the dialogue between a work of art and the artist, and the place that it's in. Every work of art appears differently in the context of where it's shown. And I love it that it's around the corner, and that I came around and looked behind, it felt those stairs, and felt the depth of them, and felt, again, her experience of being a child and the unknown, and that she was a consummate compositionalist. She would rework until she got it exactly the way she wanted and got the first prize. She really dedicated herself to it her whole life, and this is, I think, one of the best that shows the mystery of my mother's work. She had that, and yet she was not mysterious with me. I was very fortunate to have this woman be the first person I met in the world.
The research on this piece was done by docent Joanne Phillips, so thank her for that. No, this is, next one is, oh, okay.
Is it Corita Kent?
You got it, yes.
I got it. Yeah, but I can't. Oh, and by the way, this is this like mother, like daughter. She's a fabulous artist herself, so just runs in the family. Okay, now we're going to talk about Corita Kent, who is also known as Sister Mary Corita Kent, and Sue Altman did the research for this. Corita Kent was a nun and a teacher at Immaculate Heart College in Los Angeles. She left the order, I'm a little taller, in 1968 when her politics were deemed too controversial. She played a significant role in the activist movements of the 1960s and 70s, including the anti-Vietnam War movement and the civil rights and women's rights campaigns. Kent's artwork primarily took the form of serigraphy, not very good at this, silkscreen, and was strongly influenced by Andy Warhol and the pop art movement. She combines bright colors, as you can see, texts and images taken from spiritual and consumerist sources. This is seen in Benedicto, which is what this is called, which features a highly stylized praying figure, brilliant color, and the use of lettering. Well-known works include the rainbow swash design on Boston's LNG storage tank and the 1985 postage stamp design for the USPS. Pretty cool. There's not much more I can say, except I know I took someone around to see this, and they actually, in looking at the lettering, they saw the word, and I think it must, can you guys see? Does it say Benedicto? It does say Benedicto. It's such a swirl. It just feels so 60s and so, modern and un-nun-like. But anyway, she did a fabulous job, and she was really a political person. So I love the fact that we've got one of her works in the museum.
Hello, my name is Annie Clark Harity, and it has been my absolute pleasure to research this painting that I fell in love with. German Impressionist Louise Kornsand studied in Germany at the School of Women Painters, where she was recognized for her outstanding talent and determination. She quickly achieved critical success in international exhibitions. Louise was Protestant, her husband Jewish, and their son Emil, a Mischling in Nazi terminology. In 1938, when commanded to segregate from her Jewish neighbors, Louise vehemently refused. At her insistence, Emil, a virtuoso violinist, escaped Germany. On the very day of Emil's departure, Gestapo arrived to arrest him. The Mendelssohn family generously deposited $3,000 in a New York bank, ensuring Emil's escape. The following year, Louise joined Emil on Cape Cod. Emil performed with the Boston Symphony Orchestra at Tanglewood and was associate conductor of the Cape Cod Symphony Orchestra. Louise Kornsand's bold, decisive brushstrokes are emblematic of her inspirational life. In this portrait of her son, a violin rests against his heart. His hands are relaxed and gentle. Enveloped by a warm, richly textured aura of ochre oils, he gazes away from us with more than a hint of sadness in his eyes. Most of Louise's early works were destroyed in Allied bombings. Although Louise painted this portrait when she was in her early 60s and lived into her 90s, it is among her last. The war took an emotional toll on her. This is a portrait of survival. It exudes a mother's love and compassion. Kornsand reveals Emil's inner essence and demonstrates the superb artistry of a brave master.
Hi there, I'm Shawn Dahlstrom, and I'm going to be talking to you about Betty Lane. Now, I will tell you right from the start that she was rebellious. Her father was a Marine Corps general, 6 children. She was the youngest, and she said at a very early age, I'm going to be an artist. And so after high school, she said, no. And anyway, let me talk about this picture because I love this. I love it for the humor, for the insights, and composition. So look, let's take a look at the composition. It's off center, which gives us, it starts to pull us in. We take a look at these apples and how this continues up here, right? Looking at the people behind, we have what looks like could be an older woman with lines of young women. Miss Porter started out as a finishing school. Now, it's not that today. It's a collegiate prep school. And then take a look at the faces, the jewelry, the way she wears her pearls. She wears her pearls. So I think Betty Lane is making comments on the past. All right. So one of the things is that she was very well known here on Cape Cod. She'd gone to France and she'd studied for 2 years, has a work in the Phillips collection. In fact, Duncan Phillips, before it was the Phillips collection, it was his personal collection. gave her her first private show, which enabled her to fund her studies in Paris. One more thing, because I know we're running a little bit behind, is that she also lived on the Cape Cod and retired after 14 years teaching at Miss Porter's school, which is probably why we see this portrait.
I know Lorraine Lapointe is here. I was hoping she might get up and treat us.
First, I just want to say thank you to the museum and to my new friend Priscilla for being assigned to my painting. Oh, sure. Pardon me. It's so funny to see this because it's been 19 years and I haven't seen this painting since 2006. Wow. So it was kind of this flood of wow. So much has evolved in my work over the years. I currently live in Wellfleet. Sure, sorry. I currently live in Wellfleet. My husband's a figurative artist. My daughter is also an artist and a ceramicist. So I've been a working artist for about 30-odd years. And now my work has evolved so much where I do a lot of stormy seascapes with a much thicker impasto and things like that. So just to see that evolution, what I try to do is I'm always trying to achieve like an emotional response to the painting. I want it to feel like you're either sleepwalking through the landscape or, as some people say, they feel like they're drowning at sea if you see any of my current work. But there's always a light on the horizon. So there's always something positive, approaching. So yeah, it's just kind of like to see this old friend after so many years and to see how much things have changed. But what I try to do when I start my pieces is I'll start with like a 15-minute sketch. I try to stay really in the right side of my brain and not worry too much about the nouns of the landscape, trees or I don't put objects in my paintings most often like boats. I have, and I do that a little bit, but that's more about 5% of my work. But I really try to create more of an emotional response to the piece. I strictly work in oil. And I tend to work in a square format, and I prefer doing much larger.
Can you tell us a little bit about what your artwork looks like 11 years? Is it 11 years later? 19 years later?
19 years later, yeah. Like I was saying, I've been focusing a lot. What I did one year is I took about almost 2 years off to sort of reinvent myself. I never want to feel too comfortable with my work. So I started using much bigger brushes. I would use seashells I found on the beach, pieces of driftwood to scratch into the pieces and use much thicker impasto paint. So, and again, just sort of having a sort of an emotional response to the piece and not getting caught up in, I feel like when I'm in my studio, once I start going to the left brain or I start picking up small brushes, it's time to stop. So I try to just keep all the pieces sort of reactionary. So I want the viewer to, when they see the piece, just to have like an instant response to it, just, depending what that is. I had a gentleman once come in, didn't know I was the artist, and was looking at all these stormy seascapes I did, and he's like, and he said this right to me, he said, whoever painted these has a darkness in their soul. I'm like, well, if you notice, there's always a light on the horizon. I didn't want to say that, it was probably more about him than me. But I appreciated it. I was like, yes, I got a response. So you just never know. So yeah, you kind of take it all, with humor. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Oh, yes, okay. All right, this is the work of another docent, Barbara Hoos. You're right, I'm not as tall. let's come down to my level. Okay. Ellen LeBeau creates monochromatic images inspired by many cultural traditions. She is known for a technique using an X-Actone blade to draw through black ink to a white clay-coated surface below. Mona Lisa's study draws on her personal experiences in Haiti as well as her fascination with the stylized figures of Russian Orthodox iconography. She says, black and white reduces things to basic dynamic elements and a good drawn line feels alive. In this powerful portrait, an elder woman is posed as a Byzantine icon of the Madonna. The penetrating eyes, bold lines, and detailed patterns invite a closer look. LeBeau says, visual art unfolds itself the longer it is looked at. The more you look, the more you see, the more you don't analyze, the more you feel. So let's look a little closer. The mother or grandmother is fiercely protective of her child. She's given a crown and the child a halo. In one upraised hand, she wields a tulip, which is the symbol of deep, unconditional love, like a dagger, challenging all comers. At her side, a flock of cranes, which are associated with longevity, peace, and good fortune, is arranged. The window reveals the world outside. It's an outside, a protective home, and it may be the world that this child is going to have to face and its many challenges. This is a really, really very deeply touching piece. I hope you spend some time looking at it because there's more and more to find as you look at it, and we're still looking.
Hello everyone, I'm Judy Hadley and I'm very pleased to be able to share this work with you by the artist I've come to really admire, Claire Layton. You can see her dates there. She passed away in 1989. This particular work of art, we'll talk about it first and I'll tell you a little about her. You'll notice it says wood engraving transfer. So this plate is called cod fishing, and Claire Layton was famous, admired all over for her wood engraving skills. So this plate, the image is of cod fishing. Wedgwood, the company Wedgwood, commissioned her in 1948 to execute 12 wood engravings that would be transferred by the company to plates and sold as a set, commemorating New England industries. So she spent 3 years once she got that commission traveling around New England. It was her first time in New England. She had immigrated from England in 10 years prior, but she'd lived in the South. So this was her first time in New England. She came to love the region. That's a story for after we talk about this. If you notice, this plate typifies the other plates as well. She's described the activity, the labor, the industry, the fishing. So there are 5 individuals in this plate. You can see 4 of them in the boat in front, and one of them is, maybe it'll be hard to see, but he's back in the back boat, and they're all involved in harvesting this catch. But and the wonderful the gulls that are, there are about 23 gulls on this plate depicted. There's a lot of detail. In the bottom of the plate, or maybe the foreground, you'll see a very oversized cod. I mean, relative to what she's doing is she's emphasizing the tools of the trade, and each plate has the tools of the industry, as she called it, as Wedgwood called it, depicted. So Claire Layton was a lover of rural life
or land and sea. She avoided cities, so all of the plates are depicting things like marble quarrying, cranberrying, lobstering, whaling, and the museum has a whole set. You can go on the website and see all of them, as well as a number of her wood engravings. Let's see, finally, I just wanted to mention that she's a versatile artist. In her later years, she was commissioned to produce stained glass. Well, actually, the design for stained glass. And if you go to Wellfleet, where she lived for 10 years, you go to the Methodist Church, you can see 2 stained glass windows that she designed. Thank you.
Okay, now I am being someone else. Am I? Yes, I am. I am now Barbara Gray. Okay. Former co-owner and director of the Pleasant Bay Camp on Cape Cod, if any of you are familiar with that, my husband is, Barbara Melcher loves sailing in the sea. In this holograph print, she glued a variety of different sized and textured materials to a rigid surface in order to create a printing plate. This plate was then put through press and transferred to paper. The resulting print is a lively representation of the artist's lifelong love of the ocean and interest in playing color against color. Captured in a circle of blue, Melcher depicts the constant motion of the sea through waves of various sizes in shades of blue-green and white. An active cluster of bubbles seems to be playfully rising, swirling upward from the center. The viewer is almost tempted to tiptoe in and enjoy a little dip. You can also look at it in another way, I guess. You can look at it as a kind of inward. You can look inward and wonder about what's going on beneath. It's a rather small piece, but it definitely has a lot of movement to it, and I think that you'll really enjoy looking at it, especially when you realize that, again, we're dealing with a print, which is a different kind of printing. Yeah, I could dive in there. Okay. We're going on to another docent, Ellie Friedman, who did the write-up on this, and this is a really interesting piece. Chatham artist Carol Odell uses oil paint as preferred medium for its working qualities and richness of color. Though the body of her work also includes monotype and encaustic work, which is working with the melted wax. Although Odell draws upon her immediate environment in her creative process, her approach is intuitive and improvisational, with the emergence of a harmony of elements and color celebrated in her paintings. Odell explains that Ancient Refrain, which is the name of this piece, is a representation of space, mood, and movement. The title refers to forms that are primitive, vaguely structured, and somewhat mysterious, rather than a specific narrative. The color changes and bands of color lead the viewer through the gap in the center, and there's sort of a distant glow in the background. Texture was achieved in the gesso surface before applying paint, which emphasizes the physical nature of this material. As I look at this, these monumental forms are surprisingly fluid, and they almost seem to me, and again, you always look at art from your own perspective. I kind of see them as a group of ancient beings gathered together, maybe in a ceremony. They seem to bend and sway as they chant. Maybe they're worshiping the sun-like shapes behind them. I just think there are a lot of ways to look at this. And again, it's kind of that abstract idea where you impose whatever you feel is going on in this very evocative piece.
Is there any chance that Carol Odell might be in the room? I know she's not too far away in Chatham.
Carol, are you here?
Yes.
Carol!
Oh, great.
Carol, you should have not let me come up.
I just got here. You did a great job.
Would you like to say a few
No,
words?
we'd love to hear from you. No? Come on up. Let us know what's really going on. We're just guessing.
I am too. I can't explain it. Making art is an adventure. I start with an empty mind, and I love the materials, and the materials sort of guide me, and then it goes back and forth. I control it, the materials control it. I control it, the materials control it. And then sometimes we end up in agreement. And everybody says, well, how do you know when you're done? And when this conflict is over, that's when you're done. So like the previous speaker, I don't represent actual nouns, and I try to keep nouns out of my work, so that the viewer can experience it by themselves. And the painting represented one thing for you, but it may represent another thing for another person, and that's the joy of painting. Thank you.
It's also the joy of viewing. Thank you. So now we're going on to a piece that was researched, Ann Wolf. Okay. Oh, am I in the wrong one? Ann Packard, sorry. Here we go. I'm at the right one now. Okay, Diane Dipzinski did this one. She researched Ann Packard, who a lot of us probably are very familiar with. Ann Packard paints simple, sparsely rendered scenes of the Outer Cape and Europe. Using line, color, and texture, she conveys the energy of nature. Her paintings depict long, unbroken stretches of beach with the occasional rowboat or vague structure off in the distance. Packard never paints people in her work, as she considers her boats as individuals with a special personality. Viewers are drawn into her lone boat, sand dune, or blade of grass to pause and reflect into a deep meditative place in a space. Packard's paintings contain great expanses of ocean and shorelines and often incorporate cool moss green tones to evoke emotional coolness within the landscape. Packard said, "I do paintings that are alone, not lonely. It's an inner world of emotions and yearning. I yearn to express solitude." And notice the immensity of the sky. Oftentimes, Packard, she's just a master at evoking our Cape Cod skies. And I think it's interesting that her title is A Summer Place. And here we have one of our lovely, beautiful, gray Cape Cod days, you know, where we get out our puzzles and our playing cards and stroll the beach. And so she definitely knows our beaches and our weather very well. And our next piece, okay, here we go. This is Ann Wolf did the research on this wonderful artist. Born to an aristocratic family in Kovel, Poland, I'm probably not pronouncing that right, Miroslava Pisarenko experienced the Russian Revolution firsthand, traveling by foot at night to the Polish border. What a past. She moved to Paris to study horticulture, remained for 40 years, then immigrated to America in 1968 to seek medical attention for her son. On Cape Cod, she is remembered for her paper-cut decorative eggs and her beautiful gardens. She created Polish paper cuttings in her own intricate style, using only a pair of cuticle scissors. Pisarenko joined the Society of Cape Cod Craftsmen, where she learned to create woodcuts. Primitive in style, these charming scenes capture the bustling life of the Cape's wharfs, boats, and buildings. Colorful paint further enlivens the settings. The frames were created with driftwood she collected at the beach. Like Grandma Moses, Pisarenko has her very own idea of perspective. It's whatever she thinks. But unlike Grandma Moses and many other primitive style painters, she has not included people. Actually, that's like Anne Packard. She lets the scene speak for itself. You can imagine who the people are, what they're doing. Either she wasn't interested in them, or she found them difficult to paint. But in any way that you think about it, they are so joyful, and so you can see the fun she's having in doing this process. Okay, we're going to move on. Okay. Oh, yes. Okay, this is, I'm reading this for Maria Ianzito, who did the research. Elizabeth Pratt, the artist, said, "Inspiration comes to me in many forms: color, a word, nature, or a simple act of holding a pencil. I love the living world in all its forms, the temporal and changing nature of being, the wild, mysterious, and the unknown." Pratt embraced the spontaneous and experimental possibilities that watercolor permitted. She loved to soak her paper with water before painting, using various brushes, tools, and implements, even kosher salt, to create her effects. In Rock Plant, Pratt directs our gaze downward to the silent struggle of a tenacious plant emerging from a bed of rocks. The rounded stones in subtle shades of gray and rose contrast with the plant's leafy green. Centered by the plant and surrounded by sort of a wreath of stones, the image suggests a petaled flower. And how many of us have passed a stone wall or a pathway without a second glance? This is the eye of an artist, and that constant looking. So just think what we've been missing. Okay.
Hello again. This painting you can find when you turn right from the stair on the way to the bathrooms, like those sculptures. Don't forget to look. Like Miriam Fried, Claire Romano lived to well past 90. Claire Romano was an internationally known American printmaker, lithographer, painter, and teacher. Her work is found in the Metropolitan Museum, the Museum of Modern Art, the Smithsonian, Cooper Hewitt, and here. Claire and her husband John Ross made intaglio prints, a 15th century printmaking technique using metal plates with etched-in lines. In the 1950s, the couple joined fellow printmakers in Yugoslavia. No metal plates were available to make that kind of print. So they made collagraphs, which was described earlier, a printmaking process in which cardboard shapes are glued to a cardboard surface. Sometimes fabric and other textured materials were glued. In the case of this painting, added textures were added by scratching into the surface of the cardboard. Ink is rolled on the cardboard plate, covered with paper, and run through the press bed. You can make this at home even if you don't have a press. You can just use an old wooden spoon to rub the print. I was a teacher in the 1970s, and I made collagraphs with the kids. I had no idea that's what they were called, but that's what we did. In Pebbles and Tide Pools of Truro, Romano creates a feeling of constant pushing, pulling, and rolling. Small pebbles have been transformed into massive boulders. barely contained by the boundaries of the print. Incise lines in between and on the forms animate the surface as if the rocks and pebbles were crashing into each other, grinding off smaller pieces as they collide.
Okay, now I am representing docent Kathy Vopian. Judith Shawn's father, artist Ben Shawn, who probably might have heard of him, encouraged her to draw everything she saw every day. As a young artist, she worked in oils, but later turned to acrylic, which was easier to travel with. And she also did a lot of graphic design. Simple, colorful images created with a blend of painting and silk screening became her signature style. She found inspiration in commonplace objects such as chairs and flowers, trucks, everything you can imagine. Her drawings were published almost weekly for over 30 years in the New Yorker magazine. Andean Women exemplifies Shawn's mastery of color and technique. The vibrant traditional costumes are captured in flat planes of strong color. The two women are stationary, statuesque. Their faces are stylized. Together, their shawled figures form a single curving form. They could almost be two views of the same person. Again, coupling. You're going to be seeing. Look for this. It's really interesting to see. The idea of two figures echoing each other or coupling is one that gives an additional challenge to the viewer and to the artist. It's just another way of capturing our interest and making us think a little harder. So as you look through the gallery, just keep your eye out for that idea. Okay, I think someone else is up now.
I think it's you, Annie. You're up.
I'd like to start by thanking Benton for the privilege of allowing docents to curate a show, because it's an extremely rare and unusual opportunity, and I feel very honored to be able to have done this. Prominent fashion illustrator and artist Suzanne Simon led a spirited life as expressed in the exuberant energy of this painting. Lively lines contrast with definitive brushstrokes. Dashes of red, pink, and yellow chase hints of blue. The influence of her studies with Hans Hofmann is evident as we travel in, out, and around Sentinel. Simon was a powerhouse. She raised 5 children, served as president of the San Francisco Women's Artists, taught at San Francisco City College, worked with Marc Chagall, and helped found Art for Recovery, a cancer advocacy program. The title Sentinel could be a reference to a guard, or it's possible that Simon is referring to a sentinel lymph node. A sentinel biopsy determines if cancer has spread. The hefty structure and bursts of colorful, hopeful color in Sentinel may reflect Simon's personal push-pull experience with breast cancer. Undoubtedly, this deeply engaged artist left an indelible mark on her numerous endeavors.
I do know Maureen Sutter is in the audience, but I think she'd prefer if you would do the presentation. I will say one quick note that the piece in the exhibition upstairs is on loan to be considered for the permanent collection. The one that we have in the permanent collection has faded or is less of a contrast. And so we would like to have the best representation
of Maureen Sutters in the exhibition and hopefully in the collection.
Oh. So, no, you don't want to speak? No?
I actually would.
Please, then come up. Whatever you have to say.
No, I won't speak now.
So this photograph was made when I was still doing traditional wet darkroom work. It's a gelatin silver print. It was made with infrared film, and you cannot imagine what a spectacular scene that was on the dunes that morning. So I used every tool available to me in the wet darkroom, and I thought I was a very good printer at that stage. It was made around 2006. There was a shadowy spot in one of the perfect rivulets that drove me absolutely crazy. And so I bought something called potassium ferrocyanide, which is photo bleach, and tried bleaching prints and ripping up wet prints, Ansel Adams style, and was never pleased with this print. And then eventually I got dragged into printing digitally. I was reluctant, and in those years, from the late 1990s until around 2010, a lot of digital printing was not archival. And I was someone who cared about making lasting archival prints. So when pigment ink came along and I gradually had to learn this process, years later I made the print that satisfied me. And it looks nothing like this. This isn't faded, it's just a less pleasing print. I had to work with the materials of the traditional process. So I hope you enjoy seeing the newer version upstairs. And when the docent contacted me, I was delighted, but I said, oh, please let me show the better print.
It was my pleasure to do this very moving piece of art. And I really hope you will take the time to go and explore it. And I hope I can share just a little bit of what I understand it to mean. Looking at figurative art, abstract artist Sabina Teichmann's somber painting components, for the first time, I felt I was looking at a puzzle. There were so many pieces to put together. Research revealed she had painted it in 1948, post-World War II, during a time when her Jewish heritage and concerns about the effects of the war and the Holocaust influenced her work and choice of subject matter, featuring spiritual or religious allusion. With attention to detail, Teichmann weaves rich, expressive color, using light and shadow, and elements of cubism to tell her story. In the foreground, we see a large, distraught figure, presumably the artist herself. She stands between a painting of the same scene on the easel to the left, and a prism-like portrayal of figurative shapes behind, looking over her. An arm reaches out, connecting the figures to the painting on the easel. Looking upward, hands clasped as if in prayer, we can feel the gravity of the turmoil as the artist stands almost naked before the viewer, asking us to look deeper, to feel and hear all she wants to say. It's as if she is giving voice to her inner angst, how to capture on canvas, with emotional resonance, the overwhelming story of fractured human beings who cannot speak for themselves. She presents the viewer with components on several levels: the visual components of a painting within a painting, and the components of the artist's story within the painting's story. we're fortunate to have 11 pieces of hers in the permanent collection, and lest you think all of her paintings are this heavy, she actually moved on to 2 other stages during her artistic career. And while similar style in the next stage, it is very light, colorful, it's all about family and things that we experience in life, and eventually she moved on to full abstract expressionist expression. So thank you very much.
We're in for a treat here. This is the work of Selena Treef. The docent, Barbara Puska, was lucky enough to get this as her assignment. Selena Treef's otherworldly paintings defy true categorization. Having studied with Mark Rothko and Hans Hofmann, she first considered herself an abstract artist. After developing her original style of figuration and abstraction, Treef explored these mysterious images throughout her prolific artistic career. Both visually appealing and perhaps disconcerting, Treef's figures are somewhat autobiographical. They're oil portraits of androgynous human forms, and we sometimes think maybe herself. Richly introspective, her paintings provoke a powerful sense of mystery and myth. Vibrant, flat plains of oils are contrasted with gold leaf accents. Her figures are uniquely situated for the viewer to surmise the painting's story. Treef's husband, painter Robert Henry, says of her work, "Her figures always looked alive. You could communicate with them. What story do you believe these characters are telling?" Well, these figures, in this case, could almost be on stage in their Elizabethan costumes, perhaps a couple of courtiers colluding with each other, some sort of a drama. There's a hint of a spotlight in the upper left-hand corner, and perhaps a curtain dripping down. And remember what we've noticed before about twinning. Could they be siblings, or could they be 2 views of the same person? Who knows? Okay. And I'll hand over. Yes, get up here, you. I'm not doing it.
Nikki, can't you do it?
No.
No. Okay, fine. I just thought I'd ask. So I'm back, and this was an incredible assignment. So first I want you to take a look at what looks just like some color bars. Those are actually the 21 pieces that arrived at the museum, 8 by 8 size, okay? And then this is what they look like. Okay, so, oops, pointer. And this is an amazing group of women, 21 professional women artists, all incredibly wonderful artists on their own. But back in 1999, they chose to come together to develop supportive friendships and foster creativity by forming this group 21 in Truro. What the members did was they engaged in a yearly retreat to Truro in the early fall, where they resided in these cottages along the banks of the Pamet River. Wonderful, wonderful setting, providing them with an ideal spot to paint outdoors, with new vistas every day and incredibly changing light at the same time. Some of the artists, there are 2 artists that I know are here tonight, or this afternoon, and one of them is Carol O'Dell.
Middle right.
So different colors than her other work, but very similar style. And Carol, I met Carol working on a previous show and had a wonderful time getting to know her.
visiting her gallery in Chatham. And then, here is Heather Bloom, who you met earlier. And Heather was lovely, called me to discuss the group 21 in Truro. Carol also emailed me to give me her feelings about the group and what the group meant to her as well. The creative energy that was fostered by this sisterhood inspired the women to, and still inspires them, to start afresh, to explore, to share ideas, engage, honor women, experiment, obviously appreciate nature, and enjoy immense camaraderie and affirm one another. The ritual of this treasured time away also serves for them as a springboard for new work. Their mission statement ends with these words: "During this time dedicated to joy and ease, we support one another in meeting the challenges of leading a creative life." This is the third group exhibition at this museum of 21 in Truro. So, amazing group of women. I heard there was no time for me to sing, so I'm gonna have to.
Wow, that was just an amazing presentation. I'm so proud of this museum and our docents and the artists that are here with us today. Thank you. What a treasure this research adds to these important artworks. And thank you, Nikki, for heading up the crew tonight. There's some additional programming associated with this exhibition. Let's see if I can get this to go forward here. Okay, yes. So we have a 5-week art history lecture series, Women in Art, with Sue Altman, starting on March 12th. And then we have a panel discussion called She Says, Women Leading and Inspiring in the Arts. The panelists are Joe Hay, Gwen Marcus, Sherry Mittenthal, and it's moderated by Mindy Todd. And that will be on March 13th at 5 o'clock. So we have other programming here. We have, let's see, Say It with Paint, Susan Overstreet. That's March 29th. She's a very very expressive person, and women and men are invited to paint with her. And that's 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And there is a Slow Arts Day. It's a guided tour with the museum docents. That's April 5th. And they're going to be working with the artworks in She Said. So join us on April 5th. And there's also a Overlooking Images lecture, Feminist Art Since 1970 with Megan Hinton. And that's on April 8th. So there's a lot of programming associated with this exhibition that I'd love to share with you. We also have note cards that we made from a lot of the works in this exhibition. So visit our museum shop and get some note cards. If you want to see any of these works at home or share some of what you saw today with friends and family, you can go to our website. The exhibition has a link on the She Said page that will take you to all these works and all the docent write-ups. So visit us online. And you can also look at all of the artworks in our permanent collection through our website. So I hope you become familiar with what we have. If you enjoyed what you saw today, I hope you become a member at the museum if you're not already a member. And when we go upstairs at the guest book, we are asking our patrons and guests to recommend artworks that they would like to see in our permanent collection. So please take advantage of that opportunity to give us some guidance on what you would like to see in future exhibitions. We'll be open till 7 tonight, so enjoy the rest of your evening. And I'm just really pleased with all this work that poured in from the docents. It's really outstanding. So thank you so much.
Judy, here you go.